but man, it felt good to be honest.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Thursday. I don't know if you're thirsty for Thirsty Thursday or if it's just the days are running together, but it is Thursday. It is 1 o'clock Eastern. I am very happy to have friend and channel extraordinaire, Mr. Rob Rae, joining us today. How you doing, Rob?
I am wonderful. Thank you very much, George. Appreciate you inviting me to this. I'm glad we finally got a chance to do this together.
Absolutely. I know you've been, according to you, every time we heard from you, you've been more busy now than any time that you can remember being on the road. Is that still true?
I don't know. I think, I used to take our flight times and I wouldn't log into the Wi-Fi on the planes, mostly because it sucked and it was frustrating and you want to throw your devices. But also that was kind of my break. It was a way that everybody knew I was unreachable. And I think in today's world, it's like, well, where are you going to go? Like you obviously aren't, in a meeting somewhere on the other side of the planet. I know you're at home, that kind of thing. It does seem to be more busy. And actually my CMO and I had a call first thing this morning. I don't know about you, but my calls are now starting at like 7 a.m. in the morning these days.
Yeah.
And running till about 9 p.m. But my CMO says to me, it's been really nice having you around. Maybe when all this is done, you shouldn't be traveling anymore. And I'm like, shut your mouth.
Yeah, well, my team seems to think that I never sleep anyway, like before COVID. So now I just don't sleep. I'm just always connected.
Part of that's, I'm sure, the baby too, right?
Yeah, she's going to be 1 tomorrow, Rob. 1 year old.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so remember, I couldn't make DattoCon last year.
That's right.
It was just about this time. So
that's right. And then next year, you'll give me the excuse of birthdays.
It'll be pre-negotiated. You gotta open up the map. I think I'm gonna take my lead on that from you, right? With the family scheduling app.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. I've got one that my all my family shares. It's really neat. Actually, it works kind of well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you told me about that back at IT Nation Australia, and I was like, wrote that tip down just in case.
Yeah, because you always get in trouble, like with the spouse, where it's like, I don't know where you are. You don't know what's going on in my life, especially with like heavy travel schedules. This app was like perfect because we have this thing. It's an old ConnectWise saying, if it didn't happen in ConnectWise, it didn't happen, or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I use this. The app's called Cozy, COZI. We have this expression now: if it's not in Cozy, it didn't happen. So you can't give me crap for missing a kid's birthday or something like that if it's not in Cozy. So
we'll send Arnie Bellini a thank you card for that one. How about that? So for everyone that doesn't know where you're out of Connecticut right now, right? Because that's where Datto HQ is. Yep. Everyone can see in the background the 88 days since Rob Rae's been off the road.
It was 88 days ago. I came home from Mexico. I was supposed to be on a flight to Stockholm, Sweden. It was just going to be a quick layover at JFK, which is my home airport, and went home instead and haven't left since. So.
And I definitely enjoyed the What Happens at Rob Rae's House video that popped out a few weeks back. With the family
that was interesting.
Yeah, that was good. So for everyone that doesn't know you, and I'm sure there's a few people out there that don't, how did you get to Rob Rae, SVP at Datto today? Can you just give everybody a quick history of like Rob Rae professionally?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally actually from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, started my career out in finance. Up in Canada, there's about 4 or 5 big banks, and I worked for one of those guys for about a dozen years doing banking. Realized I was never going to make any money, and a kid that I had actually working for me started a job at Compact Computers, and they were looking for a sales manager, wanted to hire somebody outside the IT industry because they were tired of I guess techs coming in trying to manage sales teams. So they thought, let's bring in a sales guy and we'll teach him tech. And that was me, literally day one at Compact Computers selling ProLiant servers. And my first question was, hey, what's a server? And everybody's like, oh crap, what have we done? So that was fun. Did that through the HP acquisition for about 4 or 5 years, and then found that was back in the day where you'd make double-digit margins on hardware sales, and those were getting depleted. And then That was a good 100% channel company. And then all of a sudden, like the odd little direct deal comes in here or there, right? And just created a little bit of channel conflict. And that's when I first recognized that everything was moving to recurring revenue. And I wanted to get on to that kind of managed services. Was like, this is just getting started. Wanted to jump into the MSP space because I wanted to be more with a startup, like, something that we can build from the grassroots rather than join another large, big corporate 100 years of policy and procedure organization. Found Level Platforms, which is RMM software, which then got acquired in 2013 by AVG Technologies. I left AVG and joined Datto back in 2013. This is when Austin McCord was running Datto, and we were probably about 40 of us sitting in Norwalk, Connecticut, trying to figure this all out. Basically now I'm coming up to my 7th anniversary here with Datto, and now we're at about 2,000 employees and 20,000 MSPs and 23 offices around the world. So the whole idea of jumping into the MSP market at a super early stage for me has paid off professionally, personally, and everything in between. So.
Wow. So you've literally been around the planet 30 times.
Oh, more than likely. I'm sure of it. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a lot of travel because, obviously when we first started with Datto, it was, they're focused on Americans. I remember being a Canadian and joining their executive team. It was like exotic that they didn't have, like they actually had a non-American on there. I'm like, it's Canada, so, it wasn't that crazy. But then we, opened an office in the UK, and then just, my job basically is to kind of take a look at markets. Where can we go and get the MSP model bought into? And the easy ones are the English speaking markets. So, I was the first Datto employee into Australia, and now we have close to 2,000 MSPs using our product out there. Started doing some work in Southeast Asia for the last couple of years, and then COVID's kind of paused that, unfortunately, a little bit, but expanding still throughout Europe, and now heading into non-English speaking markets like Germany, for example. Those have been really fun initiatives to help grow the company. But yeah, personally, I do get the chance to travel around the world, talking to MSPs everywhere.
So tell us, Rob, before we get into the topic of the session, which is sales strategies post-COVID, coming out of 2019, I got to think that Datto, non-Datto, MSPs, we're all feeling happy because it was a great year, right?
Beautiful.
What a Q1. How did that matriculate into where we're at now for you?
Yeah, it's so Q1 was awesome, right? Like a ton of forecasted growth. Everybody's growing. I remember, I remember the biggest complaint we had was whether you should or shouldn't recline your seat on an airplane. You remember that argument?
Yeah. I do. I remember that vividly, actually.
Yeah. And because I think us heavy travelers were kind of split on it, whether you should or shouldn't recline.
Yeah, I think it like the lady and the guy, and then there was like a plane removal and a cop. So I was like,
you were shaking your seat or something like that.
Yeah.
The good old days, which was only 88 days ago. Right. But funny enough, like nobody predicted this. Okay. And anybody that says they did is lying to you. I remember one of my presentation pieces that I do is it's a thought leadership piece where we talk about the future look of MSPs. What do MSPs look like in the future? Mm-hmm. And one of the things, I'd categorize it into like 6 different groupings. And I remember grouping number 6 was the work from home experience. And it was the whole idea that remote employees and finding remote employees and hiring in bricks and mortar locations is getting harder. But the IT experience that a work from home person has is much less than that of an office. So, back, I'm doing this presentation and depending on how much time I had, that would be the piece that I would chop off if I didn't have time, because that was the least interesting out of all the pieces that I would talk about. So then all of a sudden you fast forward to March, and all of a sudden we're all working from home. And this whole thing that I was talking about as far as work from home strategy and making sure you have this conversation and you provide that experience as an MSP, and everybody's going, there's no money in it. Now all of a sudden everybody in the world is doing it. I look like a genius. If only I could have predicted a pandemic. But then if I had said this to you, you would have said, Rob, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. And lo and behold, it does. So I think from a market perspective, we've all had to take a step back. I think there are some people that are thriving through this. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of people that are hurting through this. For us, products like SaaS protection and RMM technology have exploded. They've just taken off, whereas BCDR, which requires more of the physical getting in on the site, these are larger, bigger projects that require more dollars. Like those things we found like stalled a little bit. But you know what? I'll be honest. All indications are that things are getting better. And May was a better month than April. April was a better month than March, and June so far out of the gate is looking pretty strong. I'm sure you're seeing that I hope you're seeing that with your business as well.
For sure. I mean, communications has been super helpful during this time. I mean, at
Absolutely.
the end of the day, I think the message we're hearing generally, right? I'm like averaging it out, right? Is, hey, we're concerned about when the ripple effect ultimately catches up to the MSPs, right? Meaning usually their general consensus is that there's like a 6 to 8 month delay in what happens out in the real world versus what happens to the MSP industry.
Yep.
And they're wondering, does all this get caught up? Do people get back to work? Some people, inevitably are going to not reopen, right? They're just going to close their doors. And how much of that ultimately brings us to the end of Q4, for example, of this year, right? Fast forward 6 months. So that seems to be the question mark. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows. We were talking right before this, right? On events, right? Obviously travel is a big part of this industry, or has been up until this point.
Yep.
And we're like going back and forth on, who's going to be the first one, right? Who's going to, roll the dice and hope that they pulled off their event.
Yeah.
But the big question mark is second wave, right? You have no idea if and when, right?
Yeah.
So I think generally speaking, MSPs coming out of this are, hey, cautiously optimistic, depending on if they were not heavily verticalized in one of the verticals that have just been crushed.
Agreed.
And hey, how many of my customers don't make it to the end of the year, right? And they're trying to balance out what's going on. But to your point, Rob, there's been some people that have been gangbusters, meaning like they've really pressed down on marketing efforts and being visible in their areas. And you're hearing people just busier than ever now. So there's like this Jekyll and Hyde effect. So I'd really like to get your view of what, and again, you're talking to people internationally too. It's not just the US and Canada. So I'd like to get your opinion on what's happening now regionally. And then, are you feeling optimistic based on what you're hearing on the street? And then let's talk about what you've heard is or isn't working.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So first of all, it's the burning question that's on everybody's mind. How do we continue to grow our businesses through times like this? Like, what has changed from a prospecting, sales perspective, marketing perspective? What should I be doing differently? And it's a fair statement that MSPs provide so much value, but kind of undervalue that value, if that makes sense. Like they kind of undervalue the services that they provide. And it's because traditionally, I think they lean more towards the technical aspects of the sale and the market, more so than the actual value of it. So I think that there's a couple things that I would want to start off with here, which is there's a reason why managed service providers were considered essential through all of this, right? And I think about 5-6 years ago, even a few years ago, if this had happened, that whole transition of moving from an office environment to a home environment overnight would not have happened. Like there were literally businesses that were going to close their doors and pray that they had enough cash to get through their doors opening again. It's because of technology, and more so managed service providers' ability to deliver that technology anywhere is what has kept this channel going. So if we use that kind of as a foundation, okay, let's all admit and start there that you are essential to businesses operating, period, today. It's not a nice to have. Technology is a must have. And I'll give you also another little piece. I saw it recently where Forrester was doing some surveying of end users pre-COVID and post-COVID and what has changed. And the perception of the channel, there's 3 areas where the channel accelerated pre-COVID, post-COVID versus pre-COVID, meaning end users view the channel as more agile, more responsive, and more cross-functional than they did in March. So to be called more agile, more responsive, and more cross-functional, and just the ability to be flexible that way is an absolutely incredible thing. And I think those are the things that we want to leverage as time goes on, because now we can play off on the whole idea of this could happen again, whether it's a rebound of COVID, whether it's COVID-20, whether it's whatever the hell the next pandemic is, disaster is, whatever it is, we can now talk about it. And if you draw the correlation back to, say, MSPs that are in areas that are, say, heavily earthquakes or flooding or hurricanes, it's easy to go and sell BCDR in those places because it happened. It's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. Now we have something worldwide that we can talk about and what we can do. How did you respond? How would you better respond? What's the plan for the next time? Like now all of a sudden you're involved in the actual strategy and that whole concept. I mean, us in the BCDR space, we kind of took business continuity and own that. Now we're talking about business continuity on a whole new level. Like, how do we make sure that everybody is up and running all the time? So I think it's a really, really cool message. I think it's a cool time to start really almost thumping our chest and bragging about what we do for end users. And then the other part of that, and then I'll get into some more detail on how, but the other part of that is too, we were talking, I know you've been part of these conversations because we've all been talking about co-managed and heading up market and how mid-market to even large market to even enterprise need MSP services. In-house IT teams just aren't agile, responsive, or cross-functional enough. And what's happened is that was a slow process. We were all seeing it. All the indicators were that the channel is going up market. MSPs specifically are going up market. This just put the foot heavy on the accelerator. So again, another kind of good news piece is co-managed is now all of a sudden it's not a yeah, we'll get there. It is we need to start talking about it now because there's gonna be lots of good opportunity there. And there's lots of great assets that I'm happy to share with anybody if you reach out to me in regards to how to learn how to do that. Not Datto stuff, but like third-party stuff that I've been studying a lot of. Anyway, what's working? All right, so if I take a look and leading up to this, George, I did a little bit of homework just for you, buddy.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I took a look. Obviously, we have 20,000 MSPs worldwide, and I know who's growing, i.e. buying more product.
Datto is working with 20,000 MSPs worldwide. There's more than 20,000 MSPs worldwide.
Datto is working with 20,000 MSPs worldwide.
Okay.
We obviously know who's growing and who's not based on consumption of product, right?
Yeah.
Who's adding more MRR, ARR, who's decreasing. So the ones that are adding more, called them up, did some polls, like, what are you guys doing? Now, first of all, I think it's fair to say that everybody's got a hole in their bucket. We are losing some business. Everybody is, right? I think it's inevitable because there's a lot of small businesses that just were not prepared for this. Cash is king throughout these things. And there's a lot of businesses that were barely surviving, couldn't survive, closing their doors for a bit. And there's going to be a lot more good data coming out about that shortly. However, there's a lot more stuff that we're filling the bucket with to offset what we're losing as far as water goes. So in asking those questions, what are they doing? Okay. Security has now all of a sudden reared its ugly head again as a good conversation piece. Security was something that we were all focused on trying to figure out, trying to get our stories done. COVID happens. That's a secondary thought. Right now, it's operations. It's getting up and going. Security will be a secondary thought. One of the cool things about security was we actually saw a lull in malware and ransomware take a dip for the first couple weeks of COVID, because of course all the hackers had to figure out their own work from home strategies before they could get back online attacking people. However, now we're seeing more security breaches, malware attacks, ransomware attacks to the tune of about 170% versus pre-COVID, knowing that a lot of what we're doing is on home networks, it's on home routers, it's the kids have access to the same networks that your end user CEOs have access to, things like that. So security
not to throw a wrench in your thought, Rob, but I just saw this morning on my feed that 38% of workers at home have admitted that they've shared their work computer to other family members.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I've got 4 teenage daughters who love programs like TikTok, for example, which is not the safest thing in the world. You know, it's those kinds of conversations that we now can start having. And if you're looking to prospect, it's a great conversation to have, because now that everybody's kind of home settled and figuring out what next steps are, there's a ton of MSPs that are doing free security assessments for prospects. Let me come in and let me tell you, great, you're working from home, everything is set up, you're functional. Let me just do some quick poking around and see where your holes are. And then let's have that conversation. So, you know, free security assessments is one of the things that I'm hearing a lot of that seems to be working, because nobody's thinking about it. And what's kind of next, and how do we fix this? Before it was just kind of up and going, do I have access to email? Educational webinars are still massive. And as much as we are kind of hungover from Zoom and hungover from webinars, we're still seeing educational webinars very well attended. I know you're seeing a lot more attendance on your stuff. I'm seeing a lot more attendance on my stuff, because you have a captivated audience in front of a screen. As much as they're like, oh, another webinar, they're actually going. And education right now, especially around IT, is key. Chambers of commerce, which in my mind are things that I avoided like the plague pre-COVID. Those are places that people are going to look for information now, because they're starting to reach out to what the original purpose of a chamber of commerce was to literally help elevate businesses. Now they're finally saying, well, I need information. Where can I go? You know what? I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and they're actually going there. Social media, like a ton of eyeballs on social media. I despise LinkedIn. I get more ads and people trying to sell me crap through LinkedIn than I do anywhere else. However, I'm spending more time on, and so I avoid it, but I am spending a ton of time on LinkedIn. And I'm sure you've seen it, a ton of time on Facebook, because this is the way and the avenues we're using to communicate. So a lot of really cool things. Like if you think about where the eyeballs are now, those are the things that we should be leveraging. Great time to build up digital advertising, great time to build up media content for your end users, those kinds of things. And then I got a lot more, but I'll stop rambling for a second.
These are good. So I'm going to take a quick pause. So a couple things that have popped into the feed for the people that are logged into the actual live session. So I got Keith Nelson said, Rob, MSPs look like me now. Straggly beard, long hair with a bald spot and a belly.
Yeah, and there are some people that do have Santa Claus fetishes. Maybe leverage that community, and you'll make some money out there.
I have Michael saying Michael was having a hard time getting on, but he finally got on. Thanks for joining. David said, Rob, when can we have a party in NYC?
Tomorrow. I was telling George this before. Obviously, I'm in Connecticut, so not far from New York City, 40 minutes out of the city there. We've been doing some recording, and we've been moving off of Zoom and into recording studios, and we were using one out here in Connecticut. So I had my guys book my first flight for Mr. Eric Torres, flew him in from Milwaukee. And a couple of guys that are local here in Connecticut. We went to the recording studio, obviously obeyed all the Connecticut laws about social distancing and all that. But then we went out and had a drink, because the bars here are open outdoors. And it was so magical, George. It was so magical. Just being able to sit with other adults and human beings that is not your spouse and actually have a conversation about something not to do with your home. Beautiful, man. So I'm in.
It's not the Courtyard Marriott bar though.
Hey, you know what? I said to my wife, I said, I'm probably going to stay down. It's just the town over. I'm probably going to stay there, because we were going to go out and have a few drinks. And I said, I'm going to stay at the Courtyard Marriott. And she's like, go for it. Because she knows how much I miss it and how much Marriott misses me. So
fair enough.
It was awesome.
Michael, who finally did get onto the webinar, came back and said, 4 daughters. That's why you lost your hair, Rob.
Yeah, that's totally fair, because it was around that time for sure. Yeah, 4 daughters.
And then an actual business question for you from David Grubb. We're looking at how to do digital transformation for the legal services industry. They have been not super easy to adapt to remote working because of super low investments in technology. Do you actually see this as an opportunity from a vertical perspective?
Okay, so I kind of tend to I'm trying to think of a polite word to use. I kind of don't pay a lot of attention to the buzzwords that that we've all been kind of like digital transformation. It's funny, my neighbor, who I hope doesn't see this, although he's left his organization, but his previous organization, he was in finance. He was getting relocated, but he wanted to stay here in Connecticut. So he got a new job within this company, very, very large beverage company. And I said, "What's your new job?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm in charge of digital transformation." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" And he goes, "I have no idea." And I'm like, "Well, that's awesome." Because it means so many different things to so many different people, right? I think in the SMB space, I think this is a very real conversation. I think that what we've just went through is going to trigger more of that conversation. I think if you've identified and have been able to define what that means for your particular vertical, and legal is a great one to do that, I think that it's a massive opportunity for us to continue to have very, very good, intelligent conversations. And this has, again, one of those things that's really kind of pushed the button that we can now have very serious and genuine conversations about what that looks like and what transformation looks like.
So let me ask you a question. Is there is Australia, New Zealand doing better than UK, Ireland is doing better than Canada versus US? Like, is there any one part of the world that seems to be, a little bit ahead of the others?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question. Obviously, us having offices around the world, what I'm doing is I'm able to rely on data that's coming out, and actually the whole the transformation of work from home, and then what's the next step. So US market for us is the largest market, no doubt. Yep. But I can take a look at areas like Australia, for example. New Zealand is opened right back up now. They have no, I don't think they're even social distancing anymore. They've had no deaths, I think, for a number of days. So they're wide open. In Australia, there's a couple of states that are still struggling. Not growth, but there's still COVID there. And I think it's down into single digits. But there's other states that have no cases and have opened back up. So you're allowed to travel within your own state. You're even allowed to travel to the other states that do not have any COVID cases. I think there's 2 that are locked down right now, but they are getting through them, and then they'll open those up. You're not allowed in or out of those countries as far as without going through proper quarantine to get back in, which is 14 days courtesy of the federal government, which doesn't sound very appealing at all. So they're going to be fairly isolated for a while. However, if you take a look at them as an example, we've been doing virtual events. Like, we do roadshows to talk to our partners. We've been doing virtual events via webinars. They're actually opening back up and going to be having live events. And they're doing, they're doing the social distancing thing, 6 feet apart, and all the proper things. There won't be you won't be able to go up to a bar and grab a drink. You'll have to order from a waiter, and they'll have to bring it to you. So there's very specific laws that they've got in regards to this, but that's kind of step one. Germany is the other big one. And we're holding DattoCon in Germany in October. So I've got my fingers crossed that we can get through this, but they're now at the end of this month opening it up for in-person meetings of 300 people or more for the month of July. So, again, we're seeing great rates there. Canada's recovering, but they tend to be, as Canadians, we tend to be uber conservative with this stuff, very, very careful with this stuff. So I wouldn't use them necessarily as a good example, because they're happy to be kind of isolated a little bit and would rather make sure that everything is solid. In the States, dude, it's all over the place, over the place. So it's hard to say. I'm antsy. I can see other people that are antsy. I went out with 5 guys last night, which is the Connecticut law right now, to the maximum number of people. It was a blast. I would do it again in a heartbeat. And I think that, we're going to start seeing more of that, hopefully with no spike in COVID. I think we'll be able to, we'll get more and more comfortable, but it's kind of ripping that Band-Aid off, George. Who's going to be the first one to go out there and say, hey, let's get 20 people together, 25 people together, that kind of idea. My money's on you, George.
Hey, you never know. I got crazy stuff off my sleeves, like boats and, all the other shenanigans. So I got a comment in here about what about Ireland, UK, Europe? I mean, obviously,
Yeah, they're struggling almost as much as the U.S. is right now. They're going to continue to stay. I think even more lockdown, and then add in that they're also a very conservative culture, more so than North Americans are, like Australians or Americans. So I think you're going to see them locked down for a little bit longer while they get through this.
Here's a good one. I'm kind of jumping around in the question list. If I'm starting a new MSP today, do I have a shot of being successful in this market, or should I wait?
I think so. I wouldn't. I mean, what's to wait for, right? I mean, there's always time. Here's the great part about it. Like, there's a bunch of MSPs that were wildly successful at moving their end users into a work from home environment, and then the next step is a work from anywhere environment. So I think there's a good opportunity to start having conversations with prospects. Sadly, there were some MSPs that were not prepared for this and did not do a very good job. If you even look at your own partner base, your own end user base, like, did you give everybody the equal share of love? Like, you probably focused on your top ones. What happened to your bottom ones? That kind of thing. So, for me, it's always been, there's no better time than ever. I would focus on what the technologies are today, which is remote, which is cloud, SaaS. Like, I think if you're focusing on those as opposed to some of the legacy products, at least in your initial conversations with prospects on getting them interested for you in your service, I think that you can actually create a foundation there. The key is getting in there, finding out what's going on, finding out those weak points. And there's a lot right now. There's a lot of end users that are unhappy right now. There's a lot of larger shops that are unhappy with their in-house IT teams and how they responded. So I would say that this is as good of a time as any. I think we're going to get back to the growth rates that we had pre-COVID. It might take till 2021, but I think we're going to get back there for sure. IT
early
is
2021, late 2021.
No, I'm thinking I'm an optimist. Okay, I think that we're all going to be hugging each other in October. So, that's me though. So take that with a grain of salt, because I'm very sensitive that there are people that will not be doing that, even if there's ways of doing that, or the government says it's okay. But I think that IT has always been essential. The channel's always been essential, more so than ever before now. I think if we get and rally our stories together, I think we're going to get back on pace relatively quickly. And all indications right now are pushing in that direction.
All right. Question from our friend Keith Nelson again. Business question, hashtag. With RMM, as we move more and more to remote support, we lose the level of personal interaction, contact with clients.
Yep.
We do business with friends approach. We used to send texts on site simply for, the touch and feel PR, right? Versus actual technical. As delivery changes, has RMM providers considered built-in video chat while working from a customer's perspective, like that remote support session being video, like that Amazon, Fire type support approach?
Yep. Is there a question?
That is the question. Do you think that the technology providers, I guess he's targeting RMM providers, do you think that they're going to build that type of technology into their their stack?
It's essential. It absolutely is going to be essential. Like RMM technology, and of course we own an RMM technology. RMM technology has never been more important. And the good news is that the RMM vendors like us have seen significant growth in the very short period of time, and now all of a sudden recognize it's kind of like Zoom. Like, you want to figure out what's wrong with Zoom, put everybody in the world on it, and all of a sudden Zoom is like scrambling just to fix what they've got. And now they're starting to get creative on what other services they can add to it. And they want to do it as quickly as possible. And they're investing a ton of money into it. I'll give you an example. Like, we do webinars with Zoom, using Zoom around the world. They have a German translation. They don't have a Dutch translation. Well, they're scrambling to get Dutch in there because, before it was like here on the list, and now it's here on the list, and there's a ton more people using it. So it's things like that. And I think you're going to see, and we're included as well on the RMM side. We're actually planning a big RMM Tech Day on June 25th, which is our CTO, CPO, and one of the founders of our RMM tool is actually going to talk about what RMM is going to look like over the next 5 years. And we've been having these pre-calls, and they have been fascinating what these guys are thinking about these days, especially with, you know, the no touch that Keith talks about, or light touch. Like, how do you make sure you stay top of mind? How do they know you're doing that remote work? How do you do it safely without having to engage? Or if they don't want to engage with you, like some crazy, awesome kind of ideas are being discussed. And we're hoping to bring some of that to the partners on the 25th there. So good question. And thanks for leading me into plugging a webinar.
Yeah, hey, all good. Our buddy David Grubb back again says, Rob, if you were to invest 100K tomorrow, where would you invest?
Commercial real estate. No, I'm kidding. Wow. It's a tough question, because obviously I have, like, you know, a financial advisor that I use, and he asked me, you know, where do you want to do this? And I'm like, I have no idea. If I'm looking at IT, I think, again, going back to the same question of if I was going to start an MSP today, what would I do? I would focus on cloud technology. I would focus on things that allow people to do business from anywhere type technology. You know what? I'll give you an idea. I'll throw it out there right now, and I'll throw it out there because I'm immensely frustrated by it. We've been trying to figure out, and we've all been attending virtual trade shows. Have you done any of these, George?
As a
sponsor? Okay. Horrific.
Mm-hmm.
The virtual trade show platform is just terrible. And I'll tell you why, because as vendors, right, we used to sponsor these things. And if there was a virtual trade show, yeah, people could go. But to be honest, people preferred the face-to-face. And the engagement level was higher. The ROI was higher. It cost a little bit more, but it was well worth it. Virtual trade shows were kind of a secondary thing. It was a cheap way of doing things 4 months ago. Now, all of a sudden, everybody wants to do a virtual trade show because they have no other options. And these companies have not invested in their technology in the last 10 years. And their technology looks super old. It's almost like The Sims, like when the Sims first came out. It's like, here's my guy. And I'm going to press right button, left button to walk into like, what are you doing? Like, this stuff is just horrific. If I could figure that out, if I knew that we were going to be locked down again, or that virtual trade shows were going to be a thing, I'd invest a ton of money in that technology right now because it needs help.
There we go. Well, let's race to fix that one, Dave. Brian, this is actually MSP Initiative. We started this last year, just trying to bring a little bit of thought leadership to the street. So I appreciate Rob and others for, you know, sharing the love. David, again, any cool Datto promotions running for partners that are red hot?
These sound like planted questions.
They're not, right. Unless you sent them to check beforehand, Rob. I'm just kidding.
I didn't. I swear I didn't. But they're great, and thank you for leading me into this stuff. You know what? Actually, so COVID was interesting. It's interesting because you kind of take a look at how everybody reacted quickly out of the gate. And I think immediately, and I got the phone calls from media publications and association groups going, what's your deal? What's the special? You know, it's like, we're 2 weeks in, all MSP's hair is on fire. Okay. Everybody's in full blown panic mode and rushing to get home. MSPs don't want to talk to us. They don't want to sell more crap. They don't want to hear about special promos and stuff like that, because I very, very rarely am at a loss for words. And of course, the organization comes to me because I own the relationship with the channel at Datto. And Datto comes to me and goes, what do we do here? Like, what are you hearing? And I'm like, I have to make some phone calls. And that's what I do. I call a bunch of MSPs, and MSPs are like, first of all, thank you for reaching out. Second of all, I don't need or want anything from you right now, but stay tuned. And whether that was contract relief, whether it was more product, discounted product, free product, whatever the case was. And the thing is, though, the needs of everybody was so across the board. And even the end user needs were so across the board. I'm sure the MSPs saw this, where some of your end users actually were thriving like this, same with some MSPs. Some were suffering through this, same as MSPs. Some needed contract relief. Some of them just weren't going to go bankrupt, period. Like, there's just, you know, it was all over the board. So for anybody to come out and go, hey guys, here's 3 months of free software to get you through this, but you got to sign a contract, or, you know, give us a credit card because your billing's going to kick in 90 days. I don't know, my mind, it wasn't quite sincere. And then these companies coming out with big war chests. We're going to get $10 million to the channel. Like, what does that mean? And how is that going to help everybody? Like, there was no breakdown on what that meant in particular. So, we kind of took the approach of, what do you need, and tell us what you need. It was something I was actually very proud of, because we were able to satisfy most of our partner base when they called and said, look, I need free product, or I need free product for a period of time, or I need discounted product, or I need relief on my contract, or I can't pay my bill. And we were able to help. I from what I've seen, 100% of the people that asked. And that, for me, I think is a better response, because that's the same thing that the MSP is doing for their own communities. You want to be able to do as much as you can for the people that you've been working with in a true partnership fashion, and be a member of that community. So, what's red hot? Those products, as I mentioned, SaaS Protection, RMM, are red hot right now. BCDR is picking back up. One of the things that we did do that I'm also very proud of was, we didn't come out with product. We didn't come out with offers or discounts. We did all that in the background. But what we did do is, we created tools that would help MSPs. And we've got newer ones, which I'm happy to share. Checklists are always super easy things to describe out to an end user. We now have checklists, things that MSPs can help end users with in the transformation to work from anywhere, whatever that looks like. So we have some very simple ways in which you can have conversations with your end users about, what does the next phase of work look like? And what we do is, we created these things and we white labeled them, and we give them out to partners, prospects. You don't have to use Datto. We just give them out to everybody, so that you can have intelligent conversations with your end users about what the next steps are. One of the other cool things was, and we were using this internally, it was a communication plan. It was like, when you take a look at a pandemic, you go through like 6 phases of it, right? Starts with depression, leads to alcoholism. No, I'm kidding. But, there's the first phase where everything's on fire. And then there's okay, everybody's settling in. Now there's a lull. Now we're looking at what's next. Now we are at what's next. And then we're planning for the future. And internally, we're using this plan, and it sprouts off into communications and all these types of things. We're using this plan, and I'm like, this is so cool. Like, every business needs this. So again, created a white labeled version of it to give to our MSPs, so that they could go to their end users and go, here's the plan. Okay. You are in phase 3. Here are the things that we are thinking about. Next is phase 4. Here are the things we're going to start thinking about. Here's phase 5. Here are the things you need to think about, because I'm going to come at you in a couple months, or whenever my state, city, province opens back up. And again, like, really cool kind of things that help have that consultative conversation. And again, happy to share it with anybody that wants it. As a matter of fact, just email tools@datto.com. You'll get a bounce back with that right away.
Instant love. I love that.
Yeah.
So here's a good question that came through, and I don't want to botch your name, but he says, or asks, how do I target those mid and large shops who aren't happy with the work they're getting from their existing resources?
First thing I'm going to do. Can I do a plug for Bob?
Go
Bob?
Go ahead. Right. Yeah.
So, and coincidentally, I just happen to have Bob's book on my desk. Bob Coppedge, Coppedge. Okay. I've been dragging him around pre-COVID. I was dragging him around doing presentations. I know he's been doing presentations with Robin's group, and he's doing presentations at ASCII. He has written a book called The MSP Survival Guide to Co-Managed IT Services, which is available on Amazon. This is a perfect way to do it, because there's some nuances to the sale. What do you say to the IT guy? What do you say to the CFO? What do you say to the CEO? And really breaking it down. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and it works. And then his follow-up book is actually a book that he wrote for IT managers, and it says, if you can read it, I don't want your job. This is his brand new one. He just sent me a copy. As you can see, I'm actually in the process of reading it now.
That Bob's on fire. Just
he is on fire. He's actually got a Facebook group called Co-Managed IT. What's funny is I talk to Bob on a regular basis, because I really do believe that we can push the agenda for the channel into this, and the mid-market, large market is going to be more lucrative than the small market. Like, let's just be honest. They value IT. They have more money. They're willing to spend it. It's not necessarily a complete outsource yet either. Hiring IT people was hard pre-COVID. It's going to continue, especially in-house post-COVID. So there's lots of goodness there to be had and lots of great stories. But Bob's Facebook group has I think it's quadrupled in size in the last 88 days as a result of this. So get in there, have conversations. There's lots of MSPs sharing lots of content around co-managed.
Absolutely. Definitely jump in Bob's group. Keith, back again. He says, hey, what's most important to us is support. And I know that you're there when I need you. So just more of a testimonial, I guess. I don't want your money. It's my business. What I want is good service delivery, support, implementation, and happy to be working with you. So appreciate that.
That's great. We were very fortunate that we actually started testing because our support team is based predominantly out of Norwalk, Connecticut, Rochester, New York, some in the UK. We were testing a work from home scenario because being the core product being disaster recovery, it's like, what happens if our building blows up? What do we do? So we were in the process of testing this back in January, February we would make our Norwalk, Connecticut folks, support staff work from home for a couple of days just to test it out. And then Rochester would go for a couple of days. And right now, if you call anybody from Datto, they're all at home with the exception of a few offices in other countries. But if you call any American or Canadian employee, they're all at home, including support techs, developers. And in my mind, we haven't skipped a beat. I know some will argue that because it's tech support and that's what we do is we just crap on tech support all day. But we haven't really missed a beat, and it's been really good because we don't have to rush back to work, back to an office environment.
Right on. No, I mean, and if I watched properly, I saw a fireside chat between Joe P from Channel EDE and the CEO of Datto. It sounds like the plan is that you're going to continue working out of the office at the end of the year. Is that right?
Yeah. Again, no rush, right? Everybody's functional. If anything, productivity has probably increased. And I'm sure a lot of people have seen that. We own real estate. We rent space. We'll continue to do and pay those bills. But ultimately, and again, this is the same conversation that I think every end user is going through right now is, do we need bricks and mortar? And if I don't want it, what does it look like? If I have to maintain social distancing in an office, what do I do with the other half of the staff or a third of the staff? So it's going to be a real interesting conversation. Great part about it is technology is involved at every step, which means the channel is going to be relevant at every step. And we can really be consultative and advisors in that conversation as well.
Yeah. Here's a good question that came through. Do you think the stuff that data networking, for example, is really targeted for business? Yep. Do you see that stuff going home?
I think it needs to stay business grade, but it will be available or should be talked about in home environments because home has changed. Home is no longer getting your kids online to play Fortnite. Yeah. Home is now a place where you need safe, secure, those kinds of things. I actually envision that the conversation, assuming that we continue to have this work from home or work from anywhere. Let's talk about work from anywhere because we also want, one of the things that we saw during COVID, and I don't know if you had this, George, but you start getting a little bit stir crazy being stuck in one place. Sure. That people started going to the beach and working there or going to a cottage or a cabin and working from there. People even rented some office space, just single unit office space just to be able to go to an office. They're alone there, but I've even seen some people do that. Mm-hmm. And it's the whole work from anywhere thing is going to be important. Connectivity and security around connectivity, I think is going to be important. So I think you divide it up. Here's the crappy stuff from Best Buy that your family's going to TikTok on all day. Here's the stuff that we're going to put you and your business safely and securely on. I think that's, again, these are all just, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. These are just kind of the things that, in my mind, the things that I think we can at least talk about.
Here's an interesting one that came through, and then I'm going to ask, I know we're running out of time, but this one is, if you're an MSP, you're targeting more than one vertical, right? Like financial services, medical, whatever, where it's just completely different from vertical to vertical. Yeah. How do you suggest you approach that so that you don't look like he says, don't look like trying to hit all just to stick around? I call that jack of all trades, master of none, but I mean, to me, that kind of is where MSP came from, though, Rob. Like, you
I
just
agree.
worked with whoever came to you, and then verticalization didn't come till later, right?
I agree. The verticalization conversation is an interesting one because there's a number of people out there, and I find it tends to be the least educated about managed services that would push you into a verticalized model. I will share with you that most MSPs, and when I say most, I'm thinking at least 90% have some form of like a pretty diverse group of customers. And if there's any argument against that, or any argument for that, COVID is it, right? Because what's the next industry that's going to plummet? You know, nobody wants to be servicing airlines, hotels, retail right now. Like that would just be some of the worst verticals. What's the next one? You know, what's the next one? What's the next one? So being diverse, I think, is super important for the health of your business. IT is IT, and the needs from an IT perspective, whether you're a flower shop or whether you're a lawyer's office, are relatively the same when it comes to things like security, things like data protection, things like cloud. Like it's just a different application, but the whole idea behind it or concept behind it can be delivered by an MSP anywhere. So that whole piece of being pretty diverse, I think if anything, that should add to the health of your business. And when you're talking to your end users about it, and if they're saying, well, you don't understand my space because I am X, you don't need to understand that, right? You don't need to understand that because that's what they just like they don't need to understand all the different technologies that you are selling either. You know, they're doing what they're good at, you're doing what you're good at, you're delivering the services there. But guess what? If that vertical implodes, you're still going to be in business. You're still going to be there to help them. You'll still be there to answer your phones. I think that's a super important conversation. There is nothing wrong with being verticalized within that strategy, meaning half my partners are, half my end users are law firms. Therefore, I'm going to verticalize on law firms, but the others are mix mash of a whole bunch of different things. I think that probably is the best strategy in my mind. At least a lot of the MSPs that I see that are pretty healthy have that strategy.
All right, a couple quick ones. Michael agrees with us. He says, if you're an MSP servicing SMB, you have to be diverse. I think we agree with you, Michael. David says, hey, if we stay out of NYC for another 8 weeks, we won't have to pay any NYC taxes this year. That's awesome, David. Nobody wants to pay more taxes. I think NYC needs taxes for a lot of different problems. Keith says, in your documents that might come back from that email address that you gave, or if you have something else, do you have anything that shows a cost savings sheet between investing in home networks versus the cost in brick and mortar offices? Or maybe that's something worth creating.
I will look into that for you, Keith. That's a very good one, actually. If I don't have it, I'll find it, or we'll create it. So bear with me on that.
Fair enough. See that? Rob's always working on something. And how about top couple of things that come to mind, because we started this off with what is working. Rob, what isn't working?
What isn't working as far as managed service providers? What isn't working?
What isn't working?
I think, well, first of all, I think, Jesus, like I'm normally the very positive guy. You want me to come up with what isn't working?
Just what, maybe one or two things that you've heard isn't really going over well. Just
being aggressive with people right now is not working. And I'm the first one that turned to our organization. We have a pretty aggressive sales force, and I know it. I hear the feedback every single day from you guys that we have a pretty aggressive sales force. We've taken steps in the last couple of months to remedy that. We've changed over some headcount as a result of that, but it's going to take a while for that reputation to kind of subside. One of the things that we did was immediately pull the plug on any kind of real outbound aggressive sales. I think that's not the right time for that. These are the times when you reach out and say, one of the most successful tactics that I've actually seen, and I'll call it a tactic, even though it was sincere, is that community outreach. What can I do for you? George, what's the worst part of your day right now? What's the worst part about your business right now? Or what's the worst part about your life right now? And what can I do to help you? And it's amazing how many people go, thanks for checking in on me. Everything's great. You know what? Well, I've got you, actually. This is kind of a problem. And that generally opens up and leads to, and then, that works a lot with prospects. One of the coolest things I've seen, I'm going back to positive again, is there's an MSP that literally reached out to every business in his community and said, I've got some techs, I can help you out, totally pro bono, free tech time. It's amazing how many people have come back at him and said, you know, I could really use help with this. No problem. Here's how much this would normally cost, but it's led to other relationships and other projects and therefore more upsells. And it's gotten to the point where they actually have expanded the amount of pro bono hours they're offering tech time in their community, that it's just leading to other project work. And it's pretty cool that way. What's not working?
Carlos says not doing something. Doing nothing.
Well, doing nothing is always terrible. Don't hide. Don't assume everybody's okay either. Like, that's the other thing too. But also don't be afraid. People are, it's a weird time right now. And I think if you ignore your prospects, even your staff, thinking that everything is okay, or maybe you're afraid that you don't have the answers, hiding right now, I think, is the worst thing that we can do. I think you got to be out there. You got to be visible. You've got to be positive at all times, even if you're not feeling it yourself. Don't spread the negativity. Focus on the silver linings. You know, get out there and be a real leader through this. That's what people are going to be attracted to right now. Is the people that are looking for the silver lining, that are talking about the silver lining, even though you know, these are unprecedented times. Depression is up significantly. Alcoholism is up significantly. Spousal abuse is up significantly. Like, these are all side effects of being isolated. We're not creatures that are used to being cooped up like this. And I think a lot of the tensions that we've seen as well around some of the race issues that we're dealing with right now, I think this a little bit of a byproduct of that as well. Is like, everybody's just so frustrated with all of this, that I think if you can overcome that and not let your staff see that, not let your team see that, not let your end users see that, and instead go out there and be the beacon of hope, I think that's what everybody needs right now. And you'll find that I think everybody will be attracted to you as a result of that. Everybody likes good news. I
agree. I absolutely agree. Rob, when do you think you're going to be, what gut check here? Throw your opinion out. First event you'll be at.
I'm ready to go anytime. So it's a matter of whether who's going to cancel an event. I think Robin Robbins is being pretty aggressive with this. She tried to hold her boot camp up until the state of Tennessee told her no. Otherwise, I think she was planning on having it. She's got a Producers Club meeting coming up in July. I'm hoping that still happens down in Nashville. They're taking all the precautions as far as social distancing and following all the rules. The hotels are following all the rules. It'll be super interesting to see, but I'm ready to rip that Band-Aid off, but I can also understand why people are not ready to do that yet. I'm hoping DattoCon in Berlin, which is in Germany, of course, but it's a worldwide event. I'm hoping that'll be ready and available for October. I'm kind of hoping that and betting on that one right now as kind of the next one. But there's a few other things. I know CRN's doing some stuff in August down in Arizona, which, you know, again, the heat kills this or whatever. But then we're also having conversations with a lot of different vendors. You and I are talking about stuff. So I'm hoping that we can safely get back out there again, because I miss everybody.
I think everybody misses you, Rob. I appreciate your time. We are like exactly on time. How about that? A couple, ones came through here. Cigars and Scotch kills the virus. Trust me. Thanks, Keith.
Yes.
And a couple really appreciating answering the questions. There was one guy that was asking potentially on pricing for Datto RMM. I'll just shoot you that guy after the webinar.
Or Rob at Datto.com.
Rob, yep, there you go. Straight to Rob at Datto.com. It'll get you exactly where you're going. So I appreciate everybody for coming. I know it's an hour everyone's day and Zoom effect and fatigue and all that. We're just trying to keep the knowledge flowing while everyone's still kind of cooped up. So MSP Initiatives, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Rob, you mentioned your event at the end of the month, the CPO, June 25th. Where can people find information on that?
Datto.com/events.
Okay. Any other events that are worth mentioning before we sign off?
There's a ton on the go. Just Datto.com/events. You'll find it all. Otherwise, I hope to see all of you out there live at some point in time.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Rob. Talk soon.
Appreciate you, George. Thank you.
Have a good one.